We are living in an exciting time for cinema, one that's hopeful for a promising future when we live in an era of uncertainty due to AI. And part of this excitement has come from YouTubers turning into filmmakers. Kane Parsons created the Backrooms short film in January 2022, and this has sparked a phenomenon that grabbed the attention of everyone. People complimented Parsons' simple but effective storytelling, pulling off something scarier than most of the horror films releasing at the time, and not relying on jump scares or cheap tricks. There's no surprise this caught the attention of executives, and a film was in development shortly after, and a massive group of horror filmmaking legends were backing this. 3 years later, Backrooms has been released to the world, but is it good? Similar to the original short films, I think Kane Parsons is really good at building tension, especially in the found footage sections of this. It's clear these are his strong suit due to the familiarity of it. These long choreographed sequences with small amounts of cuts are impressive to watch, especially because of the production design. Apparently more than 30,000 square feet of sets were built across 4 stages, and it pays off massively. You can tell the majority of the time how actors can just walk through to another room without having to hide the different sets in cuts. It feels almost like an open world game, and yet Parsons shows great restraint in how much is shown throughout. The film is very character focused, and while I have a slight problem with where the third act goes, I am impressed by how this doesn't fall into traps of going too big in scale for an adaptation. The non-found footage sections are well conceived too. Obviously it would be nice to have hindsight when Parsons directs a feature outside of this IP, but the central framing feels purposeful and pays off massively the more this film goes on. Not only does it help with the isolated feeling of the Backrooms, but it helps set up the fact that Backrooms are a physical recreation of memories. The endless nature of it keeps building and building the more people enter this space, and this is where this production design left me in awe. Screenplay wise, I think I wanted more out of parts of this, especially in the supporting cast. I feel they lacked a certain depth they needed, and instead feel like a second thought in all of this. However, this is made up by the themes presented in these 2 lead characters. Clark and Mary are very lonely people, and seeing how differently these 2 people deal with their trauma and the eventual Backrooms discovery is fascinating. It's hard to go in depth without spoilers with how this film deals with Clark, but it's very tragic and something I loved. Mary, on the other hand, I do think is restrained in a negative way. Instead, she's underdeveloped, and I'm not shocked this has caused people to not think this is a co-lead story. Ultimately, while not explored in its full potential, this film is still incredibly fascinating, and I'm glad they took this route in the screenplay instead of heavy-handed fan moments to tie into the short films. It's easy to fall into this trap when they were so popular, but instead, Kane Parsons just wants to make a good film. Chiwetel Ejiofor is brilliant in this. He plays this guy struggling to deal with his divorce and alcoholism in a nice subtle way. It's not a grand performance throughout, and it shouldn't be, with it being a more quiet, tragic performance that instead builds to these loud moments showing the insecurity within this character. Renate Reinsve is a bit underused in this. I will always be happy with a new film with her in. She's one of my favourite working actors right now, and it's great to see she had a more physically demanding role this time because she does it brilliantly. I do wish we got more of her, but she does more with what she's given than what most would have done. Like the writing, the 2 supporting cast members are underused massively. Both aren't bad actors, but it does feel like the script gives them nothing, and it's a shame as there's clear potential there. I don't want this to come off as a negative review, so I should say I liked this overall. I'm glad this is doing so well. It's the most packed I've seen my cinema in a 12 PM showing. Obviously, most of it is Gen Z, and this is great to see because things should be passed on generation to generation. Hollywood can't rely on people that rely on nostalgia. We need to move on, and this is a good sign of it. As someone who thought short films were a shining light in this cliche time of horror, there's sequences in here where I was anticipating jump scares, and I'm glad they're not here. Instead, it's perfectly tense, leaving you in the dread of these situations of life or death, and shows the promise of Parsons as a director. The score is also fantastic, specifically the moment Mary enters the Backrooms. I was taken out the film in a positive way, which feels weird to say, because I was so into what the score is doing here. I'm glad this is doing so well because it's a genuinely good film, and 2 horror films directed by young talent beating a Star Wars film within a week of release is a hopeful sign for the future of film. I hope more young filmmakers are given a chance and young audiences continue to support them. If you've seen Backrooms, let me know what you thought of it, and thank you for watching.